UFC Milwaukee this Saturday. It's likely I'll do a post show after that. We'll probably talk to Bellator shows next week, may squeeze some of that in there. But we're going to preview UFC Milwaukee right now, give you some fight odds, things like that. Kevin Lee, a minus 310 favorite in a rematch against Al Iaquinta. Iaquinta beat him. Iaquinta a plus 255. I am a full believer that Kevin Lee is perhaps the future of this division, or at least one of the futures of the division. So does GSP. GSP says that he thinks that Kevin Lee will be the UFC's next big crossover star. I couldn't agree more. I think that had Kevin Lee not battled a staph infection, we're talking about somebody besides Tony Ferguson facing Khabib, or probably already has. I think that Kevin Lee's more well-rounded game gets it done. James, what do you think?
Yeah, I do. The odds, though, are a little bit scary to me in a way because, I mean, on paper, Lee is the better fighter, but Lee's had some holes where he gets caught every once in a while. Remember the Edson Barboza fight, as dominant as he was in that one, he did get tagged in that fight, and we know the type of knockout power that Al Iaquinta has. If you're looking to put 5 in this fight, find the Iaquinta by knockout prop. That is something I think could potentially happen here. But saying that, I mean, Lee should get the win here. He's got really good wrestling. He's got really good striking. Overall, he has evolved a lot more than Al has since their first fight. He should win, but there's always that risk where he gets tagged. I mean, he got knocked out. Who's the guy who hasn't fought in forever? Jose Aldo's training partner. He knocked Kevin Lee out. I'm trying to remember his name, but Leo Santos. That's what I'm thinking of. So Lee has had issues like this, in where he's been tagged. So that's my only worry in this fight, just because Al is a really good striker. But I'm picking Kevin Lee.
Santos, an excellent fighter too. It's just he's 200 years old and never fights anymore. But I mean, Leonardo Santos, an awesome fighter. So I mean, getting knocked out by him, especially Kevin Lee, he was so young then. It was 3 years ago, but I agree with you. I would put 5 on the Iaquinta knockout situation. Joe, your thoughts on this fight?
I'm not putting 5 on that. Kevin Lee wins this fight. I think he dominates Al, although Al will put the pressure on him. We all know how Al Iaquinta fights. I just think it sucks that he's a real estate agent in New York, and I can't do mortgage deals for a fellow real estate agent in New York. But if I ever get my license in New York, I'm calling Al and say, dude, let's do some deals together. But I think, I mean, I just want to hear every single interview he does leading up to the fight, of course, leading up, fight week, and then, potentially post-fight, because he just makes me laugh and smile. I've got all the time in the world for him because I spent some quality time with him and the team, with Matt Serra and Ray Longo every time I went down to New York. So I just think Kevin Lee is just on another level right now. And Kevin Lee, I think come next, by next week's show, but come Sunday morning, we're all going to be thinking, this guy belongs up in the upper echelon of the division. So no ifs, ands, or buts.
Dan Hooker taking on Edson Barboza. This is a pretty even fight on as far as betting odds are concerned. Dan Hooker has won 5 of 6, won 4 in a row, all finishes, facing Edson Barboza, who has lost back-to-back fights for the first time in his career. However, those back-to-back fights, Kevin Lee, Khabib Nurmagomedov. His last loss before that, Tony Ferguson. Then you got Michael Johnson, who can just show up and beat anybody. It's just the way it works. Donald Cerrone, another one of his losses. So Edson Barboza generally only loses to top 5 talent. That seems to be the way that it goes. However, we don't know what the years have done to him. Dan Hooker definitely on the come up. He's 28 years old, a guy that the UFC likes. He finishes fights. I expect fireworks here, Joe. I think the odds are right where they should be on this one.
Yeah, I think you're correct in that. I'm not sure if James is going to agree, but I like where the odds are right now for both of these guys, only because it's going to show a lot of where Edson Barboza is at the moment with his career, and it's also going to give us a telltale sign of Dan Hooker. Does he belong up there, right? And I think it's going to be an interesting scenario because I'm not saying the playbook is out there to how to defeat Edson Barboza, but sometimes if you bully him, you end up emerging victorious. And Dan Hooker has a way of doing that. He can do it. So we'll see what happens there. But Edson Barboza, if he uses his footwork and doesn't find himself in any trouble where he's may have a mental lapse in the fight or isn't getting beat up, tends to be so precise that he KOs people. We already know that. So it's a great dynamic in terms of a fight. And it is one of those fights that I'm just like, you know what? Ref, step out of the way. Let me see these guys go.
We mentioned being back where somebody belongs. Maybe that's where Sergio Pettis, what he's doing. Back to bantamweight, 7-1 there in his career, James. He's a guy that even when he lost at bantamweight, I think he was in a fight of the night contender. So, I mean, performs very well there, but flyweight always seemed like an easy route to a title. As we learned, not so much for Sergio Pettis. I thought he would get a title shot for sure, but he's taking on Rob Font, and the betting lines have Sergio Pettis as a plus 145 favorite. The line isn't big enough for me to put 5 on it, but I would not be surprised to see Sergio Pettis surprise the betting line at least and emerge victorious here, but taking on a Rob Font who isn't going to make that easy, although he is a bit inconsistent. I think when facing some of the top of the line guys, he struggled. I mean, he knocked off Thomas Almeida, who isn't what we thought he would be, but how do you see this one going?
Yeah, I think to use a good pun here, I think Font's going to make a bold statement in this one. Taking out really tough guy in Pettis. Look, here's the thing. Font's fought at that weight class more. Font's going to have a height and reach advantage in this fight. To me, usually when a guy moves up, you tend to favor the guy who's been in the division more, and I think that's fun. And I think the line's right where it needs to be. Pettis has all the tools. I mean, he's gotten close. I mean, much like Font. He's sort of lost to the top guys, or you think he's going to be close to a title shot and then he loses, or he has like a lapse in a fight, kind of like Font did against Pedro Munoz and kind of like Sergio Pettis did against Ryan Benoit. So I mean, both these guys have been inconsistent in their career. The question is who's going to get it done. I'm leaning more towards Rob Font in this one. I just think, again, I think he'll be able to utilize his reach. He's not going to get in bad situations. And you look at his last fight, he lost to a guy who probably should be fighting for the title in Rafael Assunção. I mean, it's to me that's not a bad loss on your resume. I think Font gets it done. I think he uses his range well, and I think he probably takes home a decision. Nothing crazy, but I think he gets it done. Yeah,
he might flip the sand script on old Pettis.
Well, the underlying factor here,
God damn it,
is who's going to make an impact, right? So you got to take a look at, in my opinion.
You're giving me a lot of Helvicta over this.
Honestly, it's Sergio Pettis, guys. The sense of urgency, right? If he doesn't have the sense of urgency, he's going to lose his fight.
Charles Oliveira minus 300 over plus 250. Jim Miller might be one I got 5 on because, quite frankly, the question just is, there's no way to break this down besides, James, does Jim Miller guillotine Charles Oliveira? Does Charles Oliveira choke Jim Miller? That's how I fully expect this fight to go down one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Jim Miller's 35 years old. He got a nice win in his last fight over Alex White, but I think in general, you just look at he was on a 4-fight losing streak before that. Oliveira's been a little bit more consistent there. I think Oliveira's, he's got to prove his worth here. I mean, he's also had some laps here. I mean, he lost that fight to Felder. This is not a fight I'm confident in. I think Oliveira should potentially win this fight just in terms of the age and just the run he's been on. But it's Jim Miller, man. You can't count this guy out. I think the value here for sure is on Miller. Oliveira, there's so many. I mean, is he going to make weight? There's all these things with this guy. It's never been about consistency with him. So I see Oliveira probably winning by submission, but you never know with him.
Joe, is Oliveira in the division now? And by the division, I mean Guida, Lozon, Sanchez, Miller, all these guys that you just throw their name in a hat, pick one out. Chiesa was kind of there for a little while. Maybe Evan Dunham ends up there, but it's just one of those guys you can throw on a Fox main card, and it's like, all right, yeah, sure, fine, whatever.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, 8 years ago, almost to the day, Jim Miller did tap out Charles Oliveira with a knee bar. I was there live for that one, and it caught me by surprise because I thought Oliveira was the future of the division. I thought Jim Miller was going to have his hands full. Well, he had his hands full of somebody's leg and submitted him. So when you're talking about putting 5 on somebody, Jim Miller's already got a victory over him, number one, and that will play in Charles Oliveira's head for a bit. It could happen at any time. We all know that some fighters can be mentally strong, some can be mentally unstable. So pay very close attention to that. At plus 250, I think Jim Miller has it. In terms of Oliveira and what he now brings to the cage with the difference since they last fought 8 years ago, yeah, man, Charles Oliveira can bring it. He can definitely bring it, and there's a reason why he's a minus 300. I think a lot of that has to do, I don't think that's smart money, James or Sean. I think that's more the public that's kind of taking those odds and separating them. Can he pull off the victory? Hell yes, of course he can pull off the victory. I just, you never count Jim Miller out, especially when he has a win over someone there. But, James said it, Jim's older. You never just know when these guys can start saying, okay, body shuts down. Either way, I think it's going to be a fun fight. So let's enjoy it while we can.
I told James off the air that Eric Spicely, a UFC fighter that he's interviewed, has a WWE tryout. Juan Adams, who makes his UFC debut, had a WWE tryout earlier this year. He is a minus 400. I will put 5 on Chris De La Rocha, even though I don't expect him to win. That is a heavyweight fight, plus 325. Maybe some value there, but I do expect Juan Adams to win. Another fight that I am interested in is Andrea Lee, minus 255, taking on Jessica Rose Clark, plus 215. All things equal, I expect Jessica Rose Clark to lose this fight. All that Andrea Lee's been through, you never know what that can do to someone. Apparently, guys, Donnie Aaron's still on the loose. Yeah. What? James, I want to know what you think of this prelim show and anything that stands out to you before we move on.
Yeah, there's a couple things in here. I'll kind of just zoom through sort of some interesting tidbits here. So Andrea Lee, she is training with Aspen Ladd. She had trained with her before, but I think sort of the focus of her camp has been there for this one, obviously because of all the issues that are happening back home. So glad to see she's getting some good, because I think Aspen's amazing. So getting to work with her is great. Jessica Rose Clark also switched camps. She's no longer at Syndicate. She's now at Extreme Couture. So getting some different looks over there. And the big thing that, at least when I spoke to her, she quit drinking. And I guess she had a problem with alcohol, and I guess that was affecting her performance. And she also sort of mentioned that her last fight, she was kind of getting away from her roots. So for this fight, she's sort of going to go back to what she's great at, which is her grappling. And we were talking earlier about title contenders. I mean, if Andrea Lee wins this fight, she's got to be up there too. She was a former LFA champion. She's someone that I know people are still not fans of her because of her defending her husband at the time, but she's got some talent. So big fight here for the flyweight division. I'm interested to see how Dwight Grant does. He's a teammate of Daniel Cormier as an American Top Team. He fights at 170, but he's looking to shine here. Actually has a new opponent. He was supposed to. Zach Otto's coming in on short notice here to take the fight. Dwight Grant's a favorite. I think that's right where it needs to be. This Adam Milstead and Mike Rodriguez fight is interesting too. Adam Milstead basically said if he doesn't win this fight, he's retiring from MMA. He's done. So a lot on the line here for him to win this one. And for Mike Rodriguez, he's got to bounce back from that really disappointing performance against Devin Clark at the New York card. So he's looking to get back in there. And I'm with you on Juan Adams. I mean, Juan is 6'5", and he's got some crazy reach. I think it's like 80 or something. It's 81. So, I mean, he's just able to bully his opponents. That's sort of what he did on Contender Series, which got him the contract. But Chris De La Rocha, this guy, we saw it in his last fight where he got that win over Rashad Coulter. He can surprise, and don't let age fool you. This guy has some talent, and there is a bit of revenge here because Coulter is actually a training partner of Juan Adams. So Juan wanted this fight. He's getting this fight. He's got to go in there and prove it. So those are sort of the things that stand out to me on the prelims as far as the fights. And I'm also looking forward to this Dan Ige and Jordan Griffin fight. Rival gyms here, Extreme Couture with Dan Ige, Jordan Griffin out of Rufus Sport. Should be a great fight, and two guys really looking to make their names in the featherweight division.